But in the 1960s, if the Beatles had travelled to the south of India rather than the north, they well would have come back with a very different sound to share with audiences, the Mridangam. And today we'll touch on that instrument and the culture that gave rise to it, as well as how other bands in Australia might like to work it into their tracks. And we'll show you an example of what that sounds like. With Indians being the largest migrant group to Australia currently, knowing the Mridangam will help us to understand many of our new neighbours. And to help you in that journey, you're joined by a couple of Sri Lankan performers, teacher Arthavan Selvanathan and his student Rudra Dorairajan. Welcome to you both.
Hi.
Thanks very much, Ashwin. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's nice to have you on to explain this instrument. So let's kick off with it. What is a Mridangam?
Look, so Mridangam is basically a two-sided South Indian and Sri Lankan percussion instrument. Essentially very similar to the tabla. You've got one side that provides more the treble and one side that provides more the bass. And we use it to both accompany Carnatic vocalists and instrumentalists, and also use it to play solo, especially increasingly so, where you can demonstrate your own patterns and your own improvised ideas.
Does it come from the temples originally, or is it from the people? Did it start with the higher end of society, the ordinary people? What's its origins?
Yeah, so the mythology around it is that it was actually an instrument that was used by gods to accompany other gods in dance performances. So Lord Shiva would dance, and there's a lord called Nandi, who is a cow or a cow-based god who would play the Mridangam along with him. So that's the original origin, and then through the years, it has found itself being used more and more to accompany vocal performances and also other dance concerts and instrumental performances in South India.
Rudra, what brought you to learning this instrument? You've devoted so many years to it. Why?
Well, it mainly started with myself liking to tap on tables and tap on the floor.
Yeah.
I remember in high school, I got so into it that my teacher actually made me stand up and go to the back of the class because I was tapping on the floor. And I kind of enjoy music, and it's something that allows me to de-stress, I guess, away from work and away from everything else.
Is there something in particular about this drum which is particularly good for de-stressing?
Well, I guess if you're annoyed or angry, you can just play as hard as you want.
It does feel like you can play this drum harder than the tabla. It feels a little more physical.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah, now with the advent of microphones, in the older days, actually, most Mridangam artists were kind of bigger individuals who could generate huge amounts of noise. Now not necessarily the case, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely something where you can bash to your heart's content, although we don't describe it like that. No. We talk about playing it, we use the Tamil word vasikara, which means kind of like playing it softly and melodically rather than hitting per se.
It's a beautiful instrument. I'm sure it's got different tones, which you can show us. So, Rudra, you were a bad boy as well. I tap as well. I got in trouble. When you took up the Mridangam, did you stop tapping?
No, I think when you hear songs, or when I hear songs and things like that, it kind of naturally just comes into me trying to tap with the rhythm.
Yes.
So I don't think I've stopped.
Arthavan, what's its place in Australian society? Is it just Indians and Sri Lankans playing it at the moment, or is it starting to creep out wider beyond the communities?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a really interesting question. I think the origin of the instrument are very traditional, for religious reasons in Carnatic circles, often by people of Brahmin descent. But more and more, I think it's gaining acceptance in the fusion context, which means playing with other North and South Indian instruments. But then also now, I think, for instance, some of us practice by playing Mridangam over the top of pop songs. There's so much scope, really, that you can go with.
Well, you sent me a sample of how that can be done. So let me play that for you. It just fits so well with rock and pop because it's strong and solid enough to be in those songs, but it adds a nice colour to a high-pitched colour.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's very, different sound to, I guess, what Western audiences are used to. And in a way, that's like you were talking about the Beatles. I guess that was one of the things about the tabla back in those tracks was that it's a sound that people aren't used to, but it still can be moulded to play similar rhythms just with a different sort of timbre.
We've had an anonymous text come in. Check out Paella by Brisbane band Soma Rasa. Great live drums with tabla drum samples. You come up a little bit to Brisbane? Are you familiar with paella or paella?
I must say I'm not, but I'm not surprised, to be honest, because I think more and more people are realizing the scope that you can generate by working with musicians of different backgrounds.
Can I get one of you to demonstrate the drum and the other person can talk a little bit about it while you're down there?
Yeah, sure. Well, why don't you talk a bit about Rudra? I'll get down there and play.
Okay. So Rudra, what are you learning at the moment? Where are you taking this instrument?
Well, it all started off with mainly there's, I guess, 4 different main beats that we normally learn.
Okay.
8, the 3, the 5, and then the 7. And from there, it goes to 14s or 13s and more. But at the moment, I think I'm trying to learn how to accompany for vocal and dance items.
Okay. All right. That's a very versatile approach to the instrument. Arthavan, I can't even see you anymore. Rudra, you are my eyes. But Arthavan, tell me what we'd like to demonstrate of the instrument, or Rudra, you can explain.
So I think maybe what we'll show you guys is just a rhythmic pattern, which is basically what's called a corvée. And a corvée is like a mathematical concept that we play 3 times, but I'll just demonstrate it once.
So the rhythm kind of dances around a bit. It sounds like there's a pattern, but it's changing. Can you explain what you were doing there?
Yeah, so I mean, one of, I guess, the characteristic things about South Indian percussion is it's quite mathematical, and there's sort of technical areas where you can demonstrate that mathematics. What that was kind of showing there was a pattern where it's 64 counts in total, and the front bit is 40 counts, and then the back bit, 7, 8, 9, that's 24. So that's sort of what that pattern was. And then at the end, it's a theomanam, which means kind of a finishing phrase. The first 2 times are played with 4 counts per beat. And then on the 3rd time, we drop it to 3 counts per beat, which is why you sort of felt that kind of change in the rhythm.
But you're very on top of it, which means you can really play on top of the music, swim around it, because you're counting it so perfectly as you vary it.
Yeah, true. I guess that's what that's what we practice and train for, is to be able to do that. Yeah.
What can you tell us about the connection between mathematics and music? Why is that link there in the south of India and in Sri Lanka? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess, music is definitely an art, but there's also scope for a certain amount of science within it, and I think there's so many videos, if you look on YouTube, people describing how famous bands like the Killers and stuff actually use a lot of kind of technical knowledge in order to generate music that appeals to the masses. And I think Carnatic music is no different. And for us, really, I guess, there's a certain number of beats. Each beat has a certain number of sub beats. And then so we can sort of, both play simple grooves, but then also play more complicated rhythms to sort of appeal to different audiences,
Can you then explain, this is one idea I'd like to share in today's segment, is the idea of konnakol, which is deeply embedded in Western music, in Indian music, but it's starting to filter out. Western musicians are embracing it. And if you understand konnakol, you can compose on the guitar, on the piano, all sorts of instruments, and create really unsurprising music with it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, so konnakol is the term we use to describe vocal percussion. And, everything that we play, we sort of need to be able to say it in a way that we can communicate. And part of the reason for that is there's so many different Mridangam schools who all play things slightly differently. Often, historically, people who came from different villages. And so as a way of being able to communicate with each other, you need a language. And what we're using konnakol for is that language. I can give you a simple example of what I just played if you want. So the konnakol for that corvée, dit dang da 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 get da dam. Tagadum dang da 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 get da dam. Dit dang da da get da tagadum dang da da get da ding ginnatum da ding ginnatum da ding ginnatum da. So that's the kind of the words that underpin what I played. And I think if you think about Western music, I mean, rappers are really focused on sort of complicated, syncopated rhythms. It's not all just on the beat, and I think that's where people are realizing there's actually a lot of similarity between these different styles of music.
Rudra, are you embracing the konnakol lifestyle as well? Is it something that excites you?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the cornerstone of what we do, because we need to understand and follow the konnakol first so that we're able to actually figure out how it goes in the beats before we can actually play. Because we need to know that so that we can keep following in time
Yes.
before playing.
It keeps you locked in.
Yeah.
As you try to share these ideas and mix with other musicians, are there any restrictions, rules? Is there a cultural reticence to sometimes going out of the pure Carnatic tradition and embracing Western music? What are the rules around sharing the music and opening it up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with any discipline, like even if you think about Western classical music, there are rules. And we similarly have rules. And, in order to, I guess, open your mind to fusion, you have to be prepared to compromise at least somewhat, And I think it depends to what extent you want to compromise as to how much you can then give. But also, I think you want to compromise in a way that still maintains the original kind of purpose of the instrument and the sound of the instrument. So I guess that's what people like us who have been brought up in Australia who are participating in fusion, I guess still staying true to the instrument is kind of the gate beyond which you don't want to go while still meeting people halfway and working with them,
If people would like to learn the instrument, where's the best place to access it around Queensland?
Look, I think it's probably fair to say that we are the main Mridangam school in Queensland. We're called SRJ Rhythm Academy, and you can look us up on our website. We've got a YouTube channel, SRJ Studio, where you can see more about us. There are many other Mridangam schools in Sydney and Melbourne, and part of our role is to try and grow Carnatic percussion in Queensland with the hope that there'll be many other schools where people can learn Mridangam in the future as well.
Can you give us a quick burst of play to finish up?
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Beautiful. You've been listening to Arthavan Selvanathan and a student, Rudra Dorairajan. Thank you both for coming in today.
Thanks very much, Ashwin. Thank you.
You are listening to ABC Radio Brisbane and Queensland.